St. Louis Sheriff Alfred Montgomery missed his court date this morning. That's because he remains in jail today and he faces charges from the state and feds. Our political editor, Mark Maxwell, joins us again to sum up what Montgomery is accused of in each case. Mark?
Yeah, hey, Paul, good afternoon. Good to be with you on 5 Plus here. Look, today was the day that Alfred Montgomery and his lawyers said would clear his name. For months, we've been hearing this. Montgomery's attorneys insisted he'd done nothing wrong, and all they needed was their day in court to bring witnesses, to bring evidence, to cross-examine the state's witnesses under oath. All of that appeared to be on track, set to start and kick off at 9:30 this morning, and then we looked around the room and saw the sheriff was missing. This state trial to expel Montgomery, it's a civil case, not a criminal one, so technically the law would allow for the case to continue. But Judge Stephen Omer and retired Judge David Mason, who's representing the sheriff in this case, both agreed that Montgomery's ability to build a strong legal defense here would be severely limited or inhibited if he was not in the room to hear testimony and to see evidence for himself. Maybe he could lean over and whisper a clue to one of his attorneys that might strengthen his case. Why was he still locked up? That's the big question. We were told he'd be present in the courtroom for his state trial this morning, but in order to do that, they have to persuade a federal judge to allow his release from federal custody. The state submitted that request. His defense attorneys submitted that request, rather. The federal prosecutors didn't even object to it. So until that federal judge ultimately rules on it, one way or the other, it appears we don't have a trial without a defendant. It's possible that after a meeting between lawyers and federal authorities this afternoon, the sheriff may ultimately be allowed to attend his trial and resume those proceedings tomorrow, one day late, starting at 9 a.m.
Okay, so two questions. I've been wanting to see who you saw in the court, who else was in there,
Yeah.
and how else, what else is going on here, how we can learn how this could go.
Well, one of the most interesting people I saw approach, there was a courtroom mostly full of people today. One of the most interesting people in that courtroom was federal prosecutor Christine Krug. She was sitting quietly in the back of the courtroom. She's the one bringing those criminal charges in federal court against Alfred Montgomery. That's telling for a number of reasons. Let's take a look at them. Certainly, she has an interest in seeing how the sheriff's defense team lays out their arguments here. She wants to be prepared. But also, it's at least possible that testimony or evidence that's dragged out into the public here in state court might potentially compromise her federal case. Lawyers like to keep their cards very close to their vest. Another person who was in court today, Paul, Tammy Ross. She's the jail commissioner who Alfred Montgomery had placed in handcuffs inside the very jail she was running. That was the epicenter of the federal case. She's expected to take the stand in state court. And since then, since he had her placed in handcuffs, Montgomery is also now accused of using that burner phone to go around a judge's order that had instructed him not to contact any witnesses. So he now faces far more severe criminal charges of interfering with and tampering with witnesses. That's the reason why he was taken from house arrest, placed into the custody of U.S. Marshals. So it seems as though the federal prosecutors are not trying to strong-arm the state into some kind of a tug-of-war to go first here. They don't really seem all that intent on having their case first, which is interesting because it almost gives the defense a dry run here in state court. They can try their hand once, see if they can somehow defend Montgomery's right to keep his badge, keep his job. Then, in federal court, the stakes will be much higher. They'll be trying to work to defend Montgomery's actual freedom because if he's convicted on those big federal charges, Paul, witness tampering, they carry serious prison sentences and penalties, so he could see some serious time in prison.
I'm glad you're there to unpack this. So many things happening.
Yeah, a lot of witness testimony and cross-examination could kick off tomorrow, but again, the big key here is can they get a federal judge to finally sign off on his release to go back in? And of course, he'd be brought there by the U.S. Marshals.
All right, you'll let us know.
Yeah, we'll find out possibly as early as this afternoon.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. And you can see Mark is the host of The Record with Mark Maxwell. It airs on 5 on Your Side, Fridays at 10:30. Thanks, man.
AM. Thanks so much.
Yeah.